Hello everyone, I'm Chester44 and welcome to this Let's Play of Tyranny. Last episode we had a nice long chat with Lantry, learning a bit more about him and a bit more about other people. And I just reloaded the game having a new session, and when I did, it turns out now I happen to have a new quest here, the Weight of Aegis. Something with Barrack. Alright, let's give a quick talk to him before we go speak with Ebb. Fatebinder, if you have a moment. Barrack stands at attention, his rigid bearing making of him an unmoving statue. There have been a number of times since I came to your service in which I have not agreed fully with your choices. That said, never have I truly questioned your judgment. I hope this pattern holds after you hear the request I now make of you. Relax, Barrack. Just tell me what's on your mind. I hoped that perhaps the adjudicator would hear my case. I can adjudicate cases in the Archon's stead. This is something you probably want to appeal to a higher power. I have been encased in this. He wraps a gauntlet against the shards of corroded iron and bronze that sweep across his chest. Shell, since Kairos' Edict of Storms made a grave of old stalwart. It occurred in service of the Overlord, and I would ask that the Overlord free me of its burden. I will happily make your case to the Archon. Thank you, Fatebinder. His salute rings like a poorly cast bell. I eagerly await the Archon's judgment. Simple enough. And it's something to speak with him. I mean, as useful as he is as a warrior, what did he do to deserve this? He served loyally and faithfully. I don't know anything about what he could have done to necessitate him being trapped forever in a suit of armor. I've seen a situation in a comic where it could get so much worse, but still. Anyway, let's go speak with Ebb here. Time to learn about her.
Salutations, Fatebinder. Or should I now call you Lord of Vendrian's Well? The Spire King? Prince of the suggestive vertical slab.
Suggestive vertical slab! Oh, I like that. And I love how glare silently is an option so many times. Jason Pendragon will suffice.
So if I might ask, what is your plan now? The edict no longer looms overhead, and Kairos' conquest of the tiers seems to be slipping. What with the armies and civil war.
First order of business, I should speak with Tunon.
I would counsel you to do just that. I'm sure the events of Vendrian's Well are best explained from your mouth to Tunon's ears. Furthermore, I'd guess the Archon of Justice would want to know your take on the Archons and their divide.
I'm also improvising. Any suggestions?
Well, my first suggestion would be to build a boat. Something durable, and take our chances on the high seas, far from Kairos.
Well, you are, from the School of Tides. You'd know how to sail.
I have a second and more practical suggestion. Look to the horizon, and slightly up. By that I mean the other spires. We should see what's atop the others. Otherwise someone else might look first.
I don't suppose you've heard of others awakening the spires like I did.
Queens and kings of past ages have claimed the spires in the sense of, hey look, I put up a scaffold and hung a banner 1/10 of the height of a spire. But that's nowhere near the same thing as what we all just saw. So I say, let's see if the other spires react to you the same way this one does. If we don't, I'll take that as your way of saying you suffer from debilitating acrophobia.
I'm not going to say destroy the Scarlet Chorus. I'm not going to say all the Overlord's minions will fall, and I will not say I will crush the remaining local opposition and complete the conquest. That's all I have for now.
Well, short of Tunon giving you orders on pain of death, you have the luxury of acting on your own volition. Though the Scarlet Chorus are likely to come for you. Whatever you decide, I'm at your disposal.
Your assistance will be most helpful. Thanks.
And I'm thankful to not be a bloody pile of offal in Vendrian's Well. Life under your banner will, I'm sure, prove most interesting.
Have a moment. Let's speak further.
What is it you need?
Ah, that's how we can add her to our party. Okay, we will. First, though, we should discuss matters at hand.
Now we're working with the disfavored. You want my advice? My advice would be to get close to Graven Ash and plunge a poisoned shiv in his ear.
Graven Ash is my ally. I won't entertain such treachery.
I will never understand why deceit is the first instinct of all Tearsmen. You are right to take offense.
Yeah, right. I'm speaking out of line. But I don't really know what to say here. I hate the disfavored, but I'm sworn to your cause, so my honest opinion won't do anyone any good.
Is there
We're
anything
working
else
with the
there?
disfavored.
I will never...
Okay.
Yeah,
no.
right. I'm speaking
I have
out
some
of line.
questions for you.
Ask away.
Let's speak of magic.
You know, I normally charge for this, but for you...
What can you tell me about your magical tradition?
Now, you know that's a very personal question. The knowledge I have is a centuries-old gift from the Archon of Tides. I would sooner discard my life than the sanctity of that gift. I will speak in generalities only.
Ask. Worst I can do is not tell you. Tell me about how you influenced Terratus Grave. Trade secret, not one I'm going to talk about. The School of Tides dies with me, and so too will this. And don't bother trying to change my mind on this matter, it'll just get ugly quick. Tell me how you influence ice, mist, and other forms of water. With years of training. Now look, most of those secrets have already been stolen ages ago by the sages. Doesn't mean I'm going to tell you just because the secret's already out, but it means you can go ask someone else if you really feel entitled to know. And before you ask, I've learned plenty of knowledge stolen by the sages, but no, I don't know how to do what Ebb does. Magically or otherwise. Can you teach me what you know? I suppose I am capable of it, but no, the secrets of the Archon of Tides dies with me. What are the philosophical teachings of your magic? There's a question I can answer. It would surprise you little to learn that we see all things, people, wars, seasons, to be cyclical, waxing and waning through their various forms like the tides and the light of Terratus Grave. The mind is limited. We're born and spend our lives dodging death. We expect all stories to have a beginning and an end. We assume all things start and stop just like us. In truth, all things are cycles, some by matter of minutes, others by matters of years or lifetimes. In the School of Tides, we appreciate patterns of all sorts. Most are called to the depths, others find their interests skybound. Many still find the tides of human emotion and political fortunes far more intriguing than inanimate tides found in the orbits and oceans. From what Archon did the Tidecaster draw upon for their magic? The first Tidecasters were given the gift of magic by our school's founder, occulted Jade, Archon of Tides. Though she was not of Kairos' ilk, she was as powerful as any Archon, and from her name and legacy we can mimic the moon's pull on the seas and change the currents. And it's from her that we have spells to turn the moon's pleasant hues into a baleful ray of searing grave light. In all these years I have not grown tired of the thrill of power. It's a rush of carnal humors every time. I'm guessing you can tell me more than I ever wanted to know about the moons. You'd be right. My magic is generally associated with the moon Terratus Grave, but you have to know where Interloper is in the sky when mucking about with mystic forces. Do you control water, or do you mimic the tidal effects the moons have on water? Both, actually. I'm amused you're keen on the difference. Our spells of ice and mist affect water directly, but are of limited volume. Displacing your own body weight in water is no mean feat. But if I were to move an ocean current, I'd drive myself nuts moving water in front of a boat a little at a time. That's where I'd use a cantrip to simulate a tidal pull. Terratus Grave is the big one, right? Tell me about it. Terratus Grave is fixed in the sky, always overhead day and night. It was first named by folks living far to the east. They'd look to the west and see the moon like a permanent hill on the horizon, a grave where the sun dies each evening. That's how the older folks saw it. If you live in the western part of the world, Terratus Grave is overhead all the time. This means that day and night it's reflecting the sun's rays, and if you know what you're doing, it doesn't just reflect, it magnifies. Interloper's the one that moves in the sky, if I remember my lessons correctly. Exactly. Interloper orbits Terratus at a steady clip, and its orbit sometimes crosses in front of Terratus Grave, leading to mystical calamity if you don't know what you're doing. That's interesting. The fact that their magic and the way it connects to the moons, actually, they do need to pay attention to how the moons are at the time in order for it to work. Also, considering what they said, how in the east the moon is on this horizon, but in the west the moon is overhead, the land only counts for about a quarter of the width of the planet. I wonder what's on the rest. I wonder if that's something they've wondered. Have you heard anything from the Tidecasters that left before the war? No, and I don't like entertaining the hope. Those cowards are all gone. If they didn't die at sea, they are dead to me. I reserve the right to be pleasantly surprised if they come back, eager to fight the good fight, but I'm not holding my breath. All the brave Tidecasters died, present company excluded.
You know, I normally
Other
charge
arcane
for
matters.
this, but for you...
Do you know anything of the magic of the Archons? Enough to know I'm out of my element. That is to say, I've studied the many Archons a great deal, and I have a great number of hypotheses and conjectures, but, well, I'm no expert yet. And like most who have invoked the Archons of times past to work magic, I do wonder what difference of birth or experience gives one of the magical potential to be an Archon. Most of my studies have been into the question of origins of form. It's known we can emulate the magic of Archons that came before us, but is it possible to tap into the magic of Archons yet to be? So far the answer seems to be no. She looks at the ground with a rumpled smirk. You know, I feel like one of the arguments there is, no, you can't, but if you did tap into magic of Archons yet to be, you would become that Archon, since you would be the first to learn it, the first to explore it, and the first to master it. So, Archons aren't just gods, who are gods in command of magic, they're the first. That would make sense in my opinion. The first to discover the form of magic would thus likely want to keep it to himself and make sure that he knows how to do it right and how to master it, and thus they become a god. It makes sense to me. Know anything about the old walls and the spires? Not enough. Never enough. Ebb smiles, twirling her staff in her hands. As a child, I was terrified of the old walls. I think that's true of most folk. Now that I can arc gravelight with a wiggle of my fingers, well, I think when I'm a shriveled old hag, dying in the old walls would be a great way to go. What can you tell me of the Bane? What I know is largely taken from Master Camberell's work and some near-fatal experience venturing close to the old walls. As best I understand it, the Banes are bits of magical will that have an extended life of their own. I'm of the belief that they nest or reproduce in the old walls, the only place you regularly find them. Our magic attracts the Bane, that much I know to be true firsthand. Again, this is personal theory, but I'm guessing they eat or drink magic, so our spells are invitations to dine. If ever we go down there, we'll have to not go with a ton of mages. I'll keep that in mind. Let's change the
Ask
subject.
away.
Tell me about yourself. What would you like to know? Tell me about your name, although I already kinda guessed. Well, I was born in Hazen the Venja, but for most of my life, and I suppose for all the days after, I'm known and will be known as Ebb. Tidecaster Ebb for those trying to be obsequious. I've also probably used a bunch of aliases that are going to haunt me at some point. Hazen? Didn't realize you were nobility. I know, I dress myself and cook my own food. So misleading. Mother was a magistrate of Ardent, father was Admiralty. It's mostly meaningless, though. Our lands are now the overlords. How'd you get the nickname? It's one of those not especially funny jokes that stuck long past its season. I wrote the word ebb incorrectly on a written examination. Master Fulvac started calling me Ebb from then on. He claimed it fit me, said I was a cynical little shit that always sees the ebb, never the flow. Ha! Okay, that explains it. I mean, I was right about it being the ebb and flow of tides, but still. Change of subject. Did you always want to be a tidecaster? So when I was a little girl, what I really wanted to be was a marine. The burly bitch at the prow of a of a trireme, first to crack some skulls when the ships rammed. You know, an honest living. Fortunately, the school sought me out before I got myself killed at sea. The School of Tides was looking for new blood, and my father was an admiral of Haven, so the school wanted me for the political connections. I got to spend my first couple years proving I actually belong with the Tidecasters. That was fun. What did you do in the years before the war? My husband was born in Apex, and he left his prosperous lands to be with me. So when the nest was empty, it seemed right we leave my homeland and see his side of the tears. We had a year and a bit to ourselves before the war upturned things. We saw all of Apex. I took him along all my old sailing routes around Five Wives and Sunder. Those were good times. Then came the war, and I learned I would be one of the last Tearsmen to live free of Kairos. Ever since then, I think Oathbreaker's technically been my chosen profession. Tell me about your family. Trying to salt old wounds. They're all gone, but if you really care to know, I had a husband, 3 kids, siblings I didn't hate. Every family has its troubles. I was lucky that awkward and stilted dinner banter was the worst of it. Tell me about your husband. Pelox Aldenos and I were married in 410. Aldenos was a falxman of the Vendrian Guard back before they were starving partisans, but I saw him more as a carpenter. Woodworking was just a hobby of his, but my fondest memories are of him trying to shape something, and me making stupid jokes about the firmness of his materials. What became of him? He perished at the gates of judgment. I saw him die. I do not wish to discuss it, just know I've made my peace with it, and am glad I was with him on the field of battle when his time came. I miss him, but it might have been for the best. Though he was only a few years older than me, my studies left me always a bit younger than him. The difference grew with time. Aldenos was slowing down and half figured the Gates of Judgment would be his last battle. If anything, he got exactly the death he wanted, so in that sense I am very happy for him. What did you like about him? He fit my aunt's advice. If he makes you walk funny, he's a keeper. Despite, or maybe because he was a warrior by trade, Aldenos got his anger out in practice and in war. He was peaceful as a frozen lake when we were together, and that fucker could cook. He could whet all my appetites. Clearly. I assume he's related to Pelox Florian? Indeed, I'm sister-in-law to Florian, Travaus, Tyrell, and an armada of cousins. The brothers were all close before the war. Shame they died far apart from each other. Tell me about your children. There were the twins, Drevenor and Lorma, then my youngest son, Acamus. Aldenos wanted more, but I was nearing the end of my trials at the School of Tides, and dueling with lethal magics is a terrible idea when with child. Drevenor and Lorma followed my husband's trade and took to the Falx. Alcamus liked the harp more than people, can't blame him one bit. But I made sure my children could read, and I'm damn proud of that fact. Probably the only thing I did right. What of the twins? They died at the Gates of Judgment. Or at least Drevenor died, run through by a disfavored spear. Lorma was at the battle, but I don't know what became of her. My fear has been she was recruited by the Scarlet Chorus. Perhaps she has a new name if she's still alive. There were the twins, Drevenor and... what became of your youngest? Without Drevenor and Lorma, Acamus, well, he never quite... He took his own life in 430. Ebb shrugs, her eyes glancing far away. I should have put him on a trireme and shoved him out onto the high seas. He did not ask for birth, nor did I prepare him for the bitterness that life would offer. I'm very sorry for your loss. Spare me the sorrow. We've all lost family to Kairos. I just lost 2 in one battle, but even then I'm hardly unique. Let's change the subject. What of the rest of your family? My family's Haven folk through and through. My mother prided herself on being descended from a Hazen Rabban, one of the founding magistrates of the city of Ardent. She looks to the side, mouth twisting in thought. Sad thing is, they died during the conquest, but that's not how I lost contact. I lost contact because magic and travel became my life. Had plenty of time to get to know them as an adult, but I simply missed it. But that one's my fault. I can't rightly blame Kairos for everything. Not so sure I believe any of this. You don't seem all that troubled.
Sorry. Did you want more tears from your conquered slaves? I've lost nearly everything during this war, but my story is a fortunate one compared to most.
Fair enough. Let's change the subject. How did you fall in with the Vendrian Guard? What does it matter now that they're gone? They seem the last hope for the Tears, and a ninny-shitting fuck of a chance is still more than no chance at all. Okay, change the subject. I have questions about the people of the Tears.
We all know how to swim, and we all know how to fight. Most Northmen are lucky to make half that boast. What would you like to know?
Conversing with her is going to be a long episode. I'm curious about the people of the Tears. I think you'll find each of us thinks themselves a child of Haven, as in my case, or a child of Azure, child of Apex, or what have you. But I suppose we Tearsmen have our shared customs. The most treasured of those customs used to be the pride of being free of Kyros's rule. When were the Tears settled? Human settlers arrived over 400 years ago. Displaced from a war between what are now Kyros's realms of Trevin and Fertile Sands, a flotilla of barely seaworthy rigs headed west across the high seas. Tearsmen will sometimes speak of the 5 wives. We use it to refer both to the first 5 settlements where the colonists made landfall, as well as to the 5 matriarchs that went on to form the ruling dynasties of the Tears. Of course, I'm leaving out the matter of the builders of the old walls. Who knows when they lived here and why they're gone? Those old walls didn't just fall out of the sky. True. Why don't men own land or women ships? For centuries, it has been our way that the men own the ships, but the women own the harbors. Our customs don't truly prevent ownership, they limit inheritance. Lands pass to daughters, then sisters, then mothers and aunts. Ships pass to sons, then brothers, then fathers and uncles. It seems strange to outsiders, but it makes sense to me. Men are blessed with wanderlust, women with a sense of the permanent. Likewise, the captain of a ship can't pause to carry a child, and the men grow restless if left in place. A little debatable. In truth, the custom varies from place to place, and you'll find men with enough wealth own land, and women with enough sway own ships. As is often the case, the nobles pick and choose their traditions. Why didn't the younger realm stand united against Kairos? Are you trying to rub it in? Yes, the younger realms were defeated one at a time by the invaders. Maybe if I was Queen of the Tears, that wouldn't have happened. Well then, what would Queen Ebb have done? I would have taken the threat seriously the moment troops were stopped marching to the gates of judgment. Am I the only person whose mother mentioned that Kairos was the real threat? Opportunity, that's what killed us. Haven wanted to watch the bastard Tyr fall apart first. Apex was hoping Haven would fall. Azure wanted Stalwart to be attacked first. Every realm of the Tears had some interest in watching their neighbors fall first, so we all held back our support until a year or so into the war. Too fucking late by then, squabbling idiots. Tearsmen live with greater numbers of beastmen. What's that like? The beastmen of the Tears are hardier and smarter than their kin elsewhere, and fortunately we have lived together in relative harmony for some time. Make no mistake, life is difficult for most beastmen in the Tears, but compared to, say, how they are treated in the Northern Empire, I would like to think we Tearsmen are a bit more modern and forward-thinking, even if just a bit. But I suppose I also take an overly optimistic view of our beastly cousins. I find their clumsy honesty endearing, and while no human will say nice things about my cooking, no beastman has ever said anything mean about my worst dishes. Interesting. Let's change the subject. What are the major resistors to Kairos' rule?
Aside from the ones you slew? Well, the Vendrian Guard were the most staunch opponents of Kairos. With their passing, the Overlord's rule is absolute. Well, aside from the local Archons being in a state of civil war. Was there a particular group you wish to discuss?
Tell me about the Unbroken.
The Unbroken is the name of the military of the now-fallen realm of Stalwart. Every citizen of Stalwart was trained to fight, and all were expected to answer the rallying cry of the Regents, the ruling small council of the realm. A decade ago, Stalwart was the ass end of jokes Tearsmen would tell each other. The people of Stalwart are obnoxiously proud of a long history of being invaded, but never losing. The disfavored put an end to their vaunted record of victory. The Unbroken still persist, albeit marginally so. The disfavored withdrew after the Edict of Storms began shredding the landscape. Their holdfast of Sentinel Stand Keep was never taken, and the citizen army, though scattered, could still be rallied.
Tell me about the Stonestalker tribe.
Kairos' war was disastrous to the human realm of Azure, but a stroke of good luck for the numerous beastmen that toiled in Azure's endless wheat fields. With the Masters all dead, the serfs have been set free. The Stonestalkers are a tribe born from these newly freed beasts. I imagine they would never bow to Kairos or the Archons. Too many generations have been enslaved. I'd wager anything they'll die before they ever bow. Beastmen understand strength and leadership, but it's always in the concrete sense. I can't pretend to know how they think, but I could never imagine them accepting an absent Prima. A distant ruler they can't see or smell seems a bit too abstract.
Alright, tell me about the Bronze Brotherhood.
The Bronze Brotherhood is one of the most feared and famous of the Free City mercenary companies. They serve the highest bidder, and during the war, that was Kairos. Most of the Brotherhood perished in the war, but a handful. The crew hired to work at Lethian's Crossing. They got to babysit the Forge-bound and survived the last few years with minor losses. The band is too small to be a serious threat to the disfavored or the chorus, but they are scourge-worshipping berserks that will adopt any enemy for the right price. Maybe even Kairos.
Are there other remnants of the Younger Realms that could still rise against Kairos?
Several sages came to our aid during the Second Battle of Vendrian's Well. I at first thought they meant to kill me, but instead they put their lives on the line for us. They spoke of others in their guild braving the Edict of Fire to salvage lore from the burning library. Though I may find them untrustworthy, it must be said that the sages have a certain fearlessness toward the Overlord. Perhaps that could be kindled further. Historically speaking, an alliance with the School of Ink and Quill is just asking to have your efforts stolen and your goals undermined. Mark my words, some things never change.
Would you rather they be our enemies?
Well, perhaps we can shove them in front of the enemy. And the ones that volunteered at Vendrian's Well weren't all bad.
Well, at least she says that much. Let's change the subject. What can you tell me about the different nations of the tiers? Before Kairos came, the tiers were the Younger Realms, the Bastard Tier, and the Free Cities, in about that order of prominence. We all trace our roots back to the Five Wives, though sometimes a bit of ancestral shoreline seems all we have in common. Tell me about the Younger Realms. Haven, Azure, Apex, and Stalwart have been the four major forces of the tiers for the last 4 centuries. A few other dynasties have tried their hand, but all eventually were defeated or absorbed into the 4 we know today. Not sure when the term younger came into fashion, but it's always been a term of humble contrast. Just look at the old walls. Someone was here before us and built them. Don't know really anything about them, but it stands to reason there used to be an older realms that did all the construction. Before Kairos came, the tiers were the Younger Realms, Tell me about the Bastard Tier. It's the northernmost of the tiers, and at the choke point to the Northern Empire. It's been a hub of trade for centuries, and a long line of merchant families and private armies have kept the realm largely lawless. Though many have used to joke about the Bastard City being sacked by rabid dogs, Tunon's capture of the city was a terrible blow to the morale of the tiersmen. We knew that day Kairos was more than just a fun story to scare your kids. What can you tell me about the Free Cities? There is little free about the Free Cities save for their independence from the Younger Realms. They are not physically adjacent, but rather politically allied by their shared hatred of the other realms. Most all of the Free Cities were defeated with little effort by Kairos' forces. Way I heard it, Narat just had to have agents hire up their mercenaries and order them to simply be elsewhere when the armies of the Overlord arrive. Oh, wrong button. Change the subject.
Ask away.
Alright. Oh boy, this is a long one and we're only halfway through! This talk is something...
What is it you need?
Oh boy, You know what? I'm going to end this episode here, because... no, let's...
What is it you need?
I'm going to end it here. Half a conversation with Ebb. Oh boy, conversations with companions are going to be long. Next episode, we'll finish our conversation with Ebb. I am so sorry this is going to be so long. Till then, I am Cheswick44. That is Jason Pendragon vs. Barrack, Lantry, and Ebb. This has been a Let's Play of Tyranny, and I will see you all next time. Oh boy.